And it's welcome back to the Sportsfan panel after a little bit of a hiatus, but we're back and raring and ready to go. And special guest today, Wayne Holdsworth. Wayne, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here again. Thank you.
Now, Wayne, got you back on because at the end of October, your initiative, UNPLUG24, on the 24th of October, imploring people to give up social media for the day. Just wanted to check in with you and see how that went.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And again, thanks for your support too. We developed a program. We thought that we would do something on Mac's anniversary, his first anniversary of his death after he took his own life on October the 24th, 2023. And I thought about a basketball tournament, working in basketball, thought about maybe a fun run, etc. But I was walking my dog, Shandy, the dachshund, and came across me that we should be doing something around what caused, well, one of the reasons that caused him to take his life, which was he was sexually extorted online. And so I thought about maybe asking anyone that I could get to abstain from social media, not from text or from telephone calls, but social media for 24 hours on the 24th of October. And so we just thought of this idea called UNPLUG24 and started to run it by a few people. And it was great because we got people like Jessica Malboy on board, and Sam Wood and Tommy Mitchell, the Brownlow medalist, and Braden Maynard, premiership player. Sarah Jones from Fox Sports also joined us. But then also we got the Premier of South Australia, Peter Malinauskas, the Premier of Victoria, Jacinta Allen, and also New South Wales, Chris Minns, to join in. And then the Federal Communications Minister, Michelle Rowland, joined in as well and actually dropped in to see me on the 24th to offer her support. And was about a campaign of about 4 weeks, I suppose. It was just off the cuff. And we're able to officially register over 130,000 people on our website. And we believe it to be more than that, only because there were 20,000 school children in Brisbane alone that abstained from that day, and they just went under the one banner of schools. So, we think it's above 130,000 and was really successful in terms of getting the reach out. But the point is to educate people on social media, and that, we were in control of social media and not social media in control of us, which I know the likes of Meta, for an example, believe that they're in control. And, I was in a lift just on Friday night, and there was about 10 of us in the lift going up to the pavilion at the Arts Centre, and 9 people were on their phones looking down, and I was the only one that wasn't. And I just thought it's just, it's something that really is controlling our lives far too much, I believe, to the point where there's predators out there that rely on accessing our children, and Mac was one of those, to extort them, to bully them. And kids have got eating disorders because of it. Kids take their own life because of it. So we've got to stand up and do something. And what eventuated out of this is that we've been lobbying with News Corp around the Let Them Be Kids program, and it's around raising the age limit to 16 for social media. And we've been working since May on that. And just last week, the Prime Minister announced that they would be implementing that over a period of a year, which is really good. And there'll be challenges to that. There'll be really a lot of difficulties in verifying ages and all that. But my belief is that if it saves one life, then it's worth it. So we're pretty happy with the outcome, Mark. And thank you for your support, because you had me in a week before, and I know many people signed up because of that exposure. So thank you.
Well, not only that, Wayne, but also you got some pretty good exposure on Channel 10's program as well. I picked up on you being interviewed on that as well.
Yeah, Channel 10 have been really good, as have Channel 7. The project had me on 3 times in that period, which was really great. And they've got big readership across Australia, or viewership across Australia, which is really important. And News Corp have been terrific too. Even yesterday there was an article. Today there's an article. It's around just protecting our children, and it's so important because it's the wild, wild west out there for kids. There's people out there that use that platforms for good, and they're terrific. But then there's people out there that want to terrorise our kids, and we have to protect them.
a good double page spread in the paper today, Wayne. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah.
And I guess from my perspective, I mean, it's a lived experience, and I've met so many parents over the last 12 months that have lost their boy or girl, in a similar circumstance, and they haven't been able to get back on the horse, or even some of them after 5 years haven't gone back to work. Some of them have turned to alcoholism, drugs. Their relationships have busted up, and all of that. And I just wanted to use Mac's death as a catalyst to do more, and to try to raise the alarm bells that this is going on. And, to have the decision makers now getting involved is really, really important. And both sides of Parliament supported the legislation last Thursday, which was really pleasing.
Wayne, can I say congratulations, both on you've been awarded, but also just what you're doing. I know you're not doing it for awards. Listen, sitting in court, I've often said if it wasn't for drugs, family violence, and social media, we'd have nothing to do.
Yeah.
So much of the work is involved in it. I go so far to say that social media, the way it's practiced now, particularly with young people, is an inhuman environment. What I mean by that is, it's not so much that there are monsters out there, although there are, but what it does is it puts children into an unnatural situation where they're not out in the sunshine for a start, but they're not talking to their mates. They're actually communicating by typing. And that's usually done by themselves in their rooms. In Japan, there's actually a word for it for kids who basically spend their lives in their basements. And so I say it's inhuman in a sense that it's a totally unnatural environment. And I think we're being held enthralled by the metas of the world and those that run it. They're not doing it for the betterment of society. They're doing it for the betterment of themselves, and they're doing very well at it. Thank you. I think it's about time we took control, and I love what you're doing.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. I really appreciate that. And that's the way a lot of people view it as well, that it's got to the stage where kids don't communicate properly, and that's because they can improperly via social media.
Yeah, Wayne, kudos to you in so many ways, Wayne. I mean, it really is an addiction. It would be interesting just to see the people that actually, like you said, 130,000 people that put down their phones or put down social media in that respect, how people would shake. Like they're waiting to get to their phone, that 24-hour period, or if they can even last that long anymore. I mean, it's crazy how addicted we are to our phones. And the NCAA that runs major college sports here in the United States just did a significant research survey and found NCAA championships and normal regular season type competition, the number of threats, the number of racial comments, just the stalking of athletes in college sports, if they fail, if they succeed, and the damage it's doing to this current generation. So I applaud you. I wish we could go from 24 hours to a month, in that, and again, try to get society back in many ways, Wayne. So kudos to what you're doing.
I've got to just jump in on that, and well done, Wayne, on what you've done. I've got 3 kids, 13 and under, and I've got my boys now playing indoor soccer on Friday nights, and it's good for this reason, just to get them off their phones just for an hour or two. And we don't yet know the damage it's doing to their brains, which are they're forming until they're 18 at least. These constant dopamine hits. I mean, when I was 12, 13, I was playing sport every weekend. There wasn't any instant dopamine hits. And it just, who knows what damage that'll be doing to them in time on a broader level.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll wait until the research comes out without doubt, but it will be, we're looking at potentially a lost generation here. And I don't say that lightly. And interestingly, overnight, the Tassie basketball coach said that, Scott said that, it had been a really tough week for the players and because they'd been slandered on social media. And, they're asking the league to protect them. Hey, Scott, protect your own players and tell them to get off social media. You're in control of it. Just stop getting on. I mean, Braden Maynard said to us that he gets hate social media every day, and he just turned off it. He said, I don't hear it anymore because I don't read it. And he feels so much better for it. So we're in control, aren't we?
I think also, Wayne, that when we were younger, at school, there's a big thing about creative thinking, creative writing. Look, I see things like social media, see things like artificial intelligence, which can basically write your essays for you. The whole concept of being creative and thinking outside the square, thinking laterally, I just think that's disappearing. And then if you're then fed into this swamp of social media for your entertainment, I think it can only have one direction, and that's not a good direction.
And you're absolutely right. And I was in Canberra in May, June, with the Let Them Be Kids initiative and trying to lobby government. And I heard some horrific stories that here in Australia, there's kids as young as 5, boys young as 5, that are addicted to violent pornography. And the reason they are is because they can. They just push, I'm over 18. And there's girls as young as 7 that have anorexia because they're body shamed. So, yeah, they're the ones that are still with us. And then there's all those ones that, like Mac, that aren't anymore.
And when that 5-year-old boy and that 17-year-old girl, 7-year-old girl grow up and get together, that doesn't sound good for a relationship, for a healthy relationship.
You're right, mate. Absolutely right. But we're now going to, we've got the year of the politicians, which is good, and that's starting to move well. But we want to drive a lot more change. And next year, this initiative, this campaign was, about a 4 to 5 week campaign, but we're going to work on it for about 5 months at the start of next year. And we want it to be as big as the MND, Big Freeze. And we're aiming for 1 million people next year to officially register here in Australia. And if we can do that, then that's a high percentage of the population. So it might just shake the cage a bit more.
Just to jump into an interesting topic, I'm almost certain will blow up, Dan, in America now that gambling's been legalised as such. I'm sure that if an athlete misses a 3-point shot or an NFL kicker misses a kick in overtime, if someone's got money on it, the vitriol will just be exponentially worse, you'd have to presume, on social media.
Yeah,
absolutely, Paul. You're 100% correct. And that's one of the reasons a lot of sport organizations have now gone into tracking companies like US Integrity or IC360 in many ways to try to track some of this gambling and some of these threats that are ongoing. But you're correct. If a student athlete at the end of a game misses a free throw that could have caused a line to go over or under, the number of threats, the number of accusations, the opportunity for people to say you threw it on purpose it's overwhelming. And again, this generation can't take that type of criticism. And Wayne, I mean, the pat on the back we used to get as younger employees was our, hey, job well done. Now it's likes. If you don't get a like on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, I mean, they continue to want to do something more extreme because, as I think Paul said, that's their dopamine in many ways. And that's the challenge you have. If somebody makes a mistake, it becomes very public in social media. And that's the unfortunate direction that we're heading in this area.
Definitely.
Well, Wayne, before you go, you were recognised on Friday night for your work with Smack Talk and UNPLUG24 as a nominee for the Victorian representative for Australian of the Year. Congratulations on that. And how did it go?
Yeah, look, it was just, when I was nominated, I didn't know I was nominated. I don't know who still nominated me, but that was fantastic. I do know a couple of people that supported me, Mark, and I really appreciate that. But the night was great. To be in the same room as the likes of Neil Danaher, who was the eventual winner, was just enormous. And to have a chat with him, albeit he couldn't communicate with me, but he can listen, he understands, was just enormous. And, just to be recognised and use that as a bit of a platform to further push our cause is really important. Pat McGorry, who won the Australian of the Year in 2011, I think it was, I sat with him for a long time, as I did with Jacinta Allen, and they're the sort of people that are movers and shakers and they can get things done. So just to have that opportunity was enormous. And I really feel privileged. And, you know me, Mark, I've always been a really proud Victorian and Australian. And, when I used to work at the old VFL before it was the AFL, when we played South Australia, it was like kick a Vic. Well, we used to hate the South Australians just as much. So I'm quite proud Victorian. But, it was a really good night. And, Mark, thank you for your support.
Thanks, Wayne. And thanks for being on the program again. As I always say to you, you're welcome on any time. anytime you want to talk about anything to do with Smack Talk or Unplug24 or any of your other initiatives, we're only too happy to talk with you.
Thanks, mate. Thanks very much, Mark. And thanks, everybody. I really appreciate your help and support.
Good on you, Wayne.
Thank you.
No, congratulations, Wayne.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's been a while since we've had the US report, Dan. So I couldn't think of any better place to start than the Yankees being 5-0 up, playing at home, and can't hold the lead and eventually lose the World Series and go down in 5 games.
Yeah, it's crazy, Mark, in so many ways. I mean, if you look at the overall World Series, the Dodgers had a lower batting average at 206, hit less homers, and scored only one more run than the Yankees. But you look at the scouting plan by the Dodgers was to force the Yankees to execute fundamentals. They allowed the Yankees to make mistakes, and they did. They forgot how to play baseball. Aaron Judge dropping an easy fly ball, not being able to throw the ball to third base from basically the middle infield, not covering first base, relay throws skittering into the infield. I mean, the Yankees just couldn't execute when they needed to timely execute, and the errors piled up for them. I mean, Freddie Freeman came up clutch for the Dodgers. What an amazing postseason he had, just in being named MVP of the World Series in the postseason this year. Just in the World Series, he had 4 homers and 12 RBIs. I mean, just a crazy outcome. And you look at just the first 3 batters for the Dodgers, they're all 3 MVPs. I mean, the Dodgers stacked themselves up earlier this year. I think we talked earlier with Shohei Ohtani's contract being $700 million, and they're saying he was underpaid, and he didn't even pitch this year. So again, I think it was the Dodgers being relatively dominant all season long. The Yankees just making mistakes in the World Series was their downfall.
How could a pitcher with so much experience as Garrett Cole not decide to cover first base, which was probably one of the pivotal plays apart from Judge dropping the easy fly ball to center field?
And I agree with you. And this goes, again, back down to the fundamentals. And this goes down to coaching. I don't know if it gets into egos or just thinking that you're going to win the game because you're pitching well or whatever it is. But these fundamentals are just basics of baseball. And these are baseball players getting paid tens of millions of dollars to play the game. Not being able to cover a first base should be an easy situation.
They're lucky, though, playing in New York, such a sympathetic home crowd, aren't they?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Nothing like playing in Brooklyn, Paul. You're exactly right.
Yeah. Dan, you raise a very interesting point there in that. Like, you're talking about the 2 clubs, that their salary cap and some of the contracts are just mega contracts, and they are paying players so much more money than other clubs in the same thing. And yet here they are. Is it because they're the superstars that they don't say, oh, well, we don't do the basics, or we just don't have to think about that, or there is no coaching of them? They're kind of managed but not coached compared to, say, other clubs. I don't know. It was just very, very odd because, these are the superstars of baseball, and they're getting millions and millions of dollars, and you think they're going to do the basics just fantastically, and you just go about it, and yet typical game under pressure, they go missing. So is that the players, or is that they're managed and not coached, or is it?
I think once you get to this point of the season, Gelding, it comes down to the players. I mean, the coaches, spring training, all the things that you work on all season long in fundamentals. Once you get to the 180th game that you're playing in the season, you would hope that you know to cover first base, that you back up the throws, that if your arm is that tired you can't get it from the outfield to shortstop. I mean, again, I understand fatigue and some of these issues, but I don't know. Maybe you just think you're the Yankees and you're going to win. You're going to squeeze out ways to win. But Aaron Judge struggled hitting-wise up until the World Series, and he finally hit a couple home runs. But coaching, being able to tell the players flat out how poorly they're playing in the locker room after post-game was probably things – I'm not in the locker room, but those are probably things I would address coming out of the first game of the series.
It just seems strange. I can't see the Yankees at spring training saying, right, you're there. You, after you pitch, you go over and stand behind first base. So you just, these are things that as a coach or a manager of that, you just expect these players to do automatically because they are the the pinnacles.
You know,
They are the stars.
If I just jump in quickly, I mean, you compare it to soccer. You've got a Real Madrid team at the moment that would have 5 of the best 10 players in the world in one team, 5. And yet they just lost 4-1 to Barcelona, who's a good team of their own accord. But just because they're all superstars, you put them together, it doesn't automatically gel. So whether you're right, Gelding, whether it's the coach that needs to get the best out of these magicians or whether it's the players themselves who, when the pressure's on, don't step up. But that Real Madrid team is worth literally billions, and yet they lost 4-1 at home.
Dan,
and it's similar to the Yankees, you know.
Dan, I was a fan of New York the Yankees as a kid because of Lou Gehrig.
Yeah.
And just thought, and I really drank the Kool-Aid with the Yankees. I just thought, I don't know it's a pinstripes, I don't know what it is, but I just love them. And I was in America during the World Series. I just was rather disappointed by the so-called champions that they had in their team. I just wonder if they're the best in America, and I presume they are because they pay them a lot of money. Are there other countries which really, I know it's called the World Series, but that's a bit silly. Should they look into other countries? And I'm thinking, of course, particularly Japan, which I think won an actual World Series or a World Championship recently, or other countries, I don't know, Cuba. But they just seem to be either running out of champions in America or the season's too long. But I was rather underwhelmed by the quality of what I saw in the World Series.
I don't disagree, and I know that obviously Shohei Ohtani, being a Japanese player, they've got a couple more stars that are coming up in that system, and so what I'm reading is that they're going to pay big money to try to get these players, and I would anticipate the Dodgers are going to be a big part of that. The Yankees, Mark would probably like to hear me say the Mets, but I don't think the Mets will be in that race in many ways. But I think those are the players that you got to look at towards the future. And I go back to Wayne's discussion on how American society has changed so much, and I think you're seeing it reflected in some of the play that's happening right now in major sports in the U.S.
Can I just got to check this very quick if I can? Did I see Shohei Ohtani's dog going on the field one match? I mean, you wouldn't imagine Joe Danaher walking out there with a Labrador on the MCG, but did he bring his dog out one match, or did I dream that?
I believe that is correct. Obviously, I think that's a big part of who he is. And hey, when you're on a streak like that, when you're as good as that, you're getting paid $700 million. I'm sure you got somebody walking behind him to make sure if the dog has an accident, he's all set and ready to go. So
get your pooch out, okay.
Dan, back on to John's points. I was just reading an article in the paper this morning. John Deeble, like he's the Asian area scout for the Dodgers. So all these clubs have people worldwide looking at Japan, looking at Australia, looking at Cuba, all these to come into the American baseball. So I know what John's getting to. It's called the World Series, but American baseball's up here, Australian baseball and baseball around the world. But they are taking the best from all the leagues, and they take them as young kids over there, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, the great thing about Major League Baseball and the system that America's got set for baseball, you got anything from a rookie league, low rookie league, people that they think have talent, but they have a lot of work to do, all the way through, obviously, the AAA into the major leagues. But you've also got the college baseball system. You've got the high school baseball system here. There's a lot of opportunities to grow as a player. If you've got an eye for batting, if you've got an arm for pitching, you can develop here in the United States from a very young age. And obviously you don't have to go to college to play baseball. You can go straight into the minor league system. It doesn't pay well, but you're going to get a lot of repetition, a lot of games, and be seen by a lot of scouts, whether you play for hopefully play for your team that drafted you or get traded down the line to a team to give you that opportunity. There's so much opportunity in baseball compared to even more than football. In many ways, because football is just so much more of a brutal sport.
I can go through that because my brother and his kids played baseball here in Australia, and they had people who were signed. The Twins actually took a 14-year-old over to America to put him through the system as a pitcher and all that, and made it to the minors and things like that. So, John, to your point, the Americans are getting the best talent from every other league around the world, and they do notify them and spot them quite early.
And I would, Gelding, just to add that a bit, I'd love to see Dodgers versus the best Japanese team play a 3-game series. I think that would draw significant ratings worldwide and draw more interest in baseball. I think it's starting to flounder a little bit because of these teams that are high priced talent. It's hard for the Cubs, the Rockies, and some of these other programs to be successful nowadays. I would really have interest in more of a World Series in that respect.
You couldn't have scripted a better World Series, though, than Yankees and Dodgers if you were running baseball.
Absolutely not. I mean, obviously the Yankees hadn't been in there for a long time. And obviously the Dodgers with Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and Freeman and those guys, just an unbelievable star-laden team. So it was the ideal scenario for Major League Baseball. It just needed to be better games for the World Series.
Now, Dan, I couldn't let this baseball segment go without you mentioned the Mets. So you opened the door. The Mets had a great second half of the season. They started off 0-5. They were many games below 500 at the All-Star break. They came home like a train. Arguable to say that they were a better team than the Yankees because they actually took 2 games from the Dodgers.
Well, we'll let you live on that, Mark. That'll be your flag, your rallying flag that you're going to carry all off season long. But yeah, they were extremely impressive in the second half of the season. I mean, what they did was somewhat miraculous. You look at the Rockies maybe in 2007, 2008 when they won 21 games straight to get to the World Series. I mean, the Mets had to do something very similar during that late July through early September time period to get to where they were.
Well, and don't discount Grimace in all of that.
What a storyline that was. Holy smokes. You talk about a little bit of exposure for McDonald's, who absolutely positively needs positive exposure right now. So,
well, yeah, because the Mets at one stage were counting wins post Grimace.
Forgive me, Professor, did I read that the Mets actually spent more than the Yankees? Is Jerry Seinfeld tipping his money in? Or?
Well, no, the Mets have got finally got an owner who will spend money.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So anyway, Dan, before you go, let's talk about the NFL. That season started. Kansas City Chiefs, the current champions, have started off 8-0. Now, what I keep saying to people is it's a bit frightening because they haven't played well yet they're 8-0.
Exactly. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. I don't know if you want to call it the Taylor Swift effect or what do you want to call it in that respect, but it's absolutely crazy. I don't know if they just haven't played the level of competition yet that caused them any kind of challenges in some ways, but obviously you continue to look at the same teams. You look at the Buffalo Bills, you look at the Kansas City Chiefs. Nice to see the Pittsburgh Steelers up there. Russell Wilson, who got let go, got bought out. I think the Broncos paid him $38 million not to play for them this season, and the Steelers up there at 6-2. Ravens, I think the Ravens are probably the biggest challenge for the Chiefs this season, though. So far in the AFC, they've won some really big games against big opponents. And they're leading up there with the AFC North as well. So, but yeah, the Chiefs, it's crazy what Patrick Mahomes has been able to do as a quarterback of the Chiefs since his rookie year, and the number of championships that he's looking to potentially win throughout his career. He may be up there with Tom Brady by the time this thing is all over.
Well, one other question, Dan. How long has it been since you've been able to depend on the Detroit Lions to win a game?
I was going to say, when we switched over to the NFC, I was going to mention, I think my team in the NFC right now, there's 2 of them, crazy enough, and I think the Lions are exceptionally good. I think their team culture and the players that they've got, they were finally able to draft some players, Mark, that are having some success on the Lions. They had such bad drafts for so long, had number 1 picks that never panned out on that team. But you look at the Lions and also wake up the Washington Commanders. I mean, Dan Snyder sells the team and all of a sudden they're leading the NFC East, well over the downtrodden. I don't know if you can call them America's team. I can't call them America's team anymore. The Dallas Cowboys, now 3-5 on the season. Obviously the Eagles playing well, but yeah, the Lions are the surprise team of the year. They played great last year, got to the finals of the playoffs last year, didn't get to the Super Bowl, but I anticipate they could get there this year.
So Dan, can you give us we love a prediction on Sportsfan Radio? What's your predicted 2 teams for the Super Bowl this far out?
I tell you what, you can't, as much as I love Josh Allen and the Bills, and obviously my team is the Broncos, and the Broncos are playing pretty well this year with a rookie quarterback. You can't pick against the Kansas City Chiefs. They just continue to have a team that gets to the Super Bowl and wins the Super Bowl, no matter which way I pick them or not. But I really do like the Lions this year in the NFC. I think that's a team to look out for. I think they're playing exceptionally well, and they got pretty far in the playoffs last year. So they've got that experience, and they've got a quarterback that can get it there. So I'd love to see Detroit. My father-in-law would love to see Detroit get to the Super Bowl. He grew up in Detroit and is a Detroit Lions fan. But I think you look at that, and the Chiefs would be my picks right now.
All right, Dan, we'll put that into the time capsule and see we'll see how well it ages in February.
Absolutely. I'll look forward to you rubbing that in my face later, Mark. So,
well, speaking of rubbing it in the face, Paul, time for Paul Dalligan to face the music. He gave us his predictions on the NRL for the season. And Paul, how did you fare with those predictions on your ladder finishes for the end of the home and away season?
With Face the Music, I don't think I should get too much of a blast. I did get 6 out of the top 8 there, and that sounds like an extended Meatloaf song. 6 out of 8 ain't bad, I don't think, in this quarter. And I can tell you this, check the tape, Professor, but not many people would have tipped Newcastle to make the 8. Your Dogs to make the 8, they're still laughing, people, when I predicted that. And they snuck into 6th there with a bullet. So I missed out on the Rabbitohs and the Broncos. But if I could recall the words of our former Premier, I might not be here today to answer questions about those two teams.
Well, the other good part about it, Paul, I went over it, and as usual, I give you a plus or minus 2 from where you select a side, because I think that's reasonable. You had 6 teams within plus or minus 2 of where they finished at the end of the season. I think that's a pretty reasonable effort.
Yeah, I'll take a bow here, which I don't know if that translates on Zoom, but I can tell you what I'm most happy about is the game's never been in better health. We even started off in Vegas, and that was a big success in terms of Australia, but Dan can jump in here. There were 60,000 people watched in America. I think we have a show here, Dan. They always run out in breaks where there's a scheduling break. Best of Hey Hey at Saturday. And I think that would rate higher than 60,000 in America. So there's a long way to go in terms of winning America over, but it worked in terms of an Australian perspective. A lot of Australians went to the game. It is heavily linked to betting over there, which is for good or bad, but there is a push to make it beyond a niche sport in America. And that's why we started the season in Vegas. Whether it caught any attention there, Dan, I'd love your input on that.
Well, Paul, can I just jump in and say, when I was in America, as I can't help myself, I spoke to, I'd say 10 different blokes in bars and just whatever. And, as I can't, again, help myself, proselytising for AFL football, just asked them, do you know anything about Australian football? And they said, rugby. Every single one, rugby. Yeah. And that I reckon must come from the Las Vegas game, or it's been publicised over there. But that was rather disappointing to me to say that no, our national game is actually not rugby. It's called AFL. And I'd never heard of it. I showed them some highlights, and it was a total foreign game to them. But obviously, you guys are getting some connection. AFL has got this brilliant idea of sending the game to China, but the NRL has decided to go to America, and I think it's a much better strategy.
I was about to say, if you grab the average punter on the street of Beijing or Shanghai, I don't think they'd know much about AFL, but that's a matter for your code. I just think it's amazing. It's a great way to start the season, and the crowds are up, importantly, and also TV ratings were through the roof. So the rugby league has never been in a better state than it is now, which I'm very proud of. And the women's game is booming as well. I've got to say the women's game is absolutely booming. Today we've got Australia and New Zealand playing at 2 p.m. There'll be a lot of people watching that with national pride on the line, and a genuine contest it'll be, which is fantastic in the women's game.
No, Paul, and I would tell you that rugby here is very much a niche sport. There's obviously some people that know it, love it, are passionate about it, but you never see coverage of it on any of the major sports networks here. And Judge, I think there was a generation that knew Australian rules football when ESPN first launched and cable systems first launched. AFL was on American TV in a very small cable package at that time, and that generation really got to know AFL football. But now you can't find it on American TV. It's no longer that popular of a sport here. So I don't disagree that people would anticipate that you're talking about rugby versus the Australian Football League.
The AFL punters, though, are doing so well. I think it's about a quarter at least of the NFL teams have an ex-AFL punter, and they're revolutionising the actual sport of punting, or the discipline of punting.
Well, the fundamental problem is that you really can't play AFL on American grounds. They don't have ovals like cricket ovals or whatever, but they have gridiron fields and they have the ability to have a rectangular field. Even a soccer field could probably be converted. So there's that natural advantage. But I think if AFL is going to do well in America, it's got to be by broadcast. It actually won't be doing what you're doing and saying, look at this, let's grow the game in America. I don't think it's ever going to happen, actually.
Yeah. I think that, it would be fantastic if we actually had like the Southern Football League. They're not played in major stadiums. They're played in smaller, fields. You can stand around the fence lines and watch games in many respects. And I think that would be a great grassroots effort. There's plenty of land here in the United States to set up those type of fields. And I think people would love. I fell in love with the game when I was over a few years back, and I'd be more than happy to come back and watch more games because I think it's more exciting than some of the sports we have here.
Paul, the Panthers, 4-peat. Can anybody beat them because they keep losing players to other teams and they still keep winning?
Well, that's the thing, and as it's Storm fans out there will be ruining another loss because the Storm had every chance. The Panthers just keep losing players every single year, and they still keep winning, largely on the back of what could turn out to be the best halfback to ever play the game, Nathan Cleary. So the Storm had every chance in that grand final, but the Panthers just keep losing, and they just keep finding players. They've got the biggest nursery in Australia, which is a big thing on their side, and a large component of their team are locals, which I'm very proud of for them. So they just seem to keep bringing these young ones through. But how long can it last? They're still favourites, I think, next year to win it all. So we will see what happens there. But it's never happened in my lifetime, and I doubt it will again 4 in a row.
Well, we'll welcome Cooter to the program. Cooter, how did you see the Melbourne Storm this year?
I think they achieved a pretty good year. Injuries certainly played a hand. I think that Jerome Hughes, for all he's good this year, unfortunately might have produced his worst game in the grand final, and whether that was the pressure on him to perform or that's the way they let him play, but certainly didn't have his normal influence. And the Storm are similar, Paul. They keep losing players. Other clubs, they don't sign high profile, although having said that, they've just signed a prop from the West Tigers to come in. But yeah, obviously the other one, Paul, and was Nelson not playing the grand final. He not playing, and the suspension he received was quite harsh, but at the same time, the damage inflicted reflected that. Is there going to be a stage where the kick-in or the kick-off is similar to the NFL now? We saw 2 weeks in a row, 2 finals in a row that were impacted by returns of the kick from the kickoff. 1 week you saw a bloke get sent off, the next week the week before you didn't. Both players succumbed to concussion. But no, certainly from the Melbourne Storm perspective, Professor, I think they developed this year. Players from other clubs that came in. Ali Katoa, this was his second year, but he became a genuine star. The other one, Paul, Sean Bloor, who I don't think anyone would have heard of, became a starting second rower for the Melbourne Storm and played an exceptional grand final, one of the real positives in the grand final. And then obviously the return of Ryan Pappenhausen this year. The other one we should mention as well, Professor, was Will Warbrick, plays on the wing at the Storm, and he's ex-rugby union sevens, so played at the Olympic Games. He improved again this year. So a lot of positives for the Storm. Probably didn't produce their best on grand final night, sorry. But having said that, they are playing against generational talent, and the actual performance the week before to make the grand final was dominant. And I think they're extremely well positioned going forward.
I've got to just jump in on that. The Storm are actually favourites for next year, which doesn't really surprise me because Panthers, just law of numbers, can't keep going surely. But this will stun everyone on the panel. Third favourite is the Brisbane Broncos. Now, F-Bomb Maguire, we know that he won a comp at South, broke the drought of 40 years, won the State of Origin, but again, it's like a team of superstars. How much coaching was involved, we don't know. But if he can turn that Broncos team from an absolute shambles into the third place favourites, that astounds me. So they must have a lot of faith in his coaching ability, the betting industry, which we know they don't give away money. So that stuns me, actually. And Professor, you'll enjoy this. Your Dogs are fifth favourites to win next year.
Paul, is it more a coaching performance, or is it being able to put a basket case in the egos all together at the Brisbane Broncos?
Well, you've got to say these comments were made pre-season, but when you got players saying he's not the coach, Adam Reynolds is the real coach, another player saying he can't coach, where there's smoke, there's fire. They shouldn't have said what they said, but if you're playing, imagine playing under Craig Bellamy and saying on a podcast he can't really coach. You just wouldn't happen. And I think that's a large part of the reason that Kevin Walters, who's like James Hird at Essendon, just being moved on, it wouldn't happen easy. He is a favourite son of that club. So the fact they've moved him on and moved him on for the New South Wales coach, I mean, that would have had people seeing red in Queensland, forgive me for the obvious pun, but literally seeing red when he was announced. But they've picked him out, and he must be the hard nut that they need, as you say, to get those egos in check, because he's a tough coach.
And Paul, the other one, obviously, changing coach is some of the greatest underperformance ever at the Parramatta Eels. Jason Riles has been appointed coach, and that was probably driven a little bit by the fact that Craig Bellamy re-signed with the Storm. And Jason Riles was seen as the next or the predecessor to him. Where do you see that being?
He's got a bit of work to win the players over, because the heart and soul of the Parramatta Eels is at the back. Clint Gutherson, he couldn't wait to get out the door. So Riles has brought in the broom, and he's going to go a long way because Clint Gutherson is very popular at that team. He's signed with the Dragons. So I don't think it's a great sign when a coach arrives and your heart and soul of your team packs the bag up, puts the boots in the bag and says, I'm done. So we'll see what happens there. I don't see it working, but we will see whether Riles can win them over.
Well, you touched on before about the women's game. We've been watching the women's game NRL with great interest, particularly compared to the AFLW. And where is it at the moment in terms of teams, the state of origin? Where's the women's game heading?
State of Origin was fantastic. They did, which I always love, took it to regional areas. So they had a game 3 in Townsville, 25,000 people, just the women's game. It wasn't a precursor to anything else. It was just an amazing State of Origin series for the first time. And they were close matches and bums on seats and a lot of eyeballs watching on the TV. So the ratings were through the roof. And as I said, we've got the benefit in rugby league, and this is not a dig at AFL, but genuine international rivalries on the male and the female side. So we've got the women's match coming up this afternoon at 1:50, Australia and New Zealand, and that will be heavily fought, and I think that would be a lot closer than what people are predicting. So it's great that at club level it's going fantastic, and there's also these international rivalries as well, which always gets the national interest and the blood pumping.
Okay, Paul, well, let's finish on the Pacific Championships. You just mentioned the Jilaroos playing this afternoon. After that game will be Kangaroos versus Tonga. Is that for the trophy?
Well, Tonga beat New Zealand, which was a massive shock, and I love seeing that. Nothing against New Zealand, but it shows that there is teams beyond Australia and New Zealand. So that is for the trophy, the big kahuna. So I think Australia should win that, but Tonga will be passionate. And I love that they base themselves in Rooty Hill, one of the better named suburbs in Australia, rather than at a top hotel in Sydney, to be amongst the community. And they will come up pumped up like a jumping castle, the Tongans today. So that'll be a cracking match later this afternoon.
And that's going to be followed by New Zealand playing a crossover game against the winner of the other division, Papua New Guinea. That'll be a hard-fought match, Paul.
Oh, it will be, and there won't be a person in Papua New Guinea not watching that. I'd love to give them some chance, but the Kiwis will be pretty angry after losing to Tonga. But Australia and Tonga will just be amazing to watch. If Tonga wins that, it'll be actually fantastic for rugby league internationally. I won't be devastated if Tonga wins, as much as I love my Australians.
Well, Judge, perhaps just finishing off on NRL and NRLW, and you brought it up, the difference between the AFLW, which is sort of in a no man's land at the moment. They're playing finals. I question whether anybody's really interested. It's too far away from when football actually happens, really, for everybody's mindset. At least rugby league have gone the right way and are playing the women's games during the season. They don't seem to have a problem with it. It seems to be kryptonite to the AFL to think that an AFLW season can be played at the same time.
Yeah, it's almost a case study of how to do things wrong, Professor, the way the AFL's done the women's game. I think they've always seen it as a virtue signalling exercise where they can say, look, we're even let the girls play now. Like, it's just pathetic. NRL's done it properly. They had respect for the women's game. They built it up gradually. They built up the interest gradually. They haven't flooded the market with too many players, and the results are there for all to see. And I just congratulate the NRL on what they've done for women's game. And I wish somebody, you said it's a no man's land, I suppose, a bit of a bad pun, but and the problem is there's too many men involving themselves with the women's game, and left to their own devices, I think the women could run the game very well, and it would look a lot different than what it does at the moment.
So I saw that at one of the finals matches yesterday in Fremantle playing Essendon, they were crowing that they had the biggest crowd that they've had, 3,000 people.
Yeah. Yes, don't get me started. The scheduling of the women's game is ridiculous, and it's an insult to the girls that play.
Well, the other thing they spoke about was the 3 games in 2 weeks, and would they ask AFL players to do that?
No. Cool.
Okay.
So that's that should be talked about more often. I haven't heard, I might have missed it, the AFL Players Association president talking or representing his players. I didn't hear him come out and say anything. He might have been very busy dealing with Mad Monday or Wacky Wednesday or whatever it is. But as you said, if that had been the AFL, how many of the women have a full-time job outside of AFLW? So there's been minimal consideration for them. The fact that really we're using it as a guinea pig again to, if it works, and they're so proud that they're having a night grand final, and immediately it then was shifted to, well, this could be a precursor to the men's. Why can't we just say the women are having a night grand final and that's it? Just actually celebrate it. Like, the AFL is going to be kissed on the dick, right? Because the actual final series to date has been excellent. The game the other night, Adelaide versus North Melbourne at Princes Park, Optus Oval, whatever you're going to call it, was an outstanding game of footy. And now they might have only had 5 or 6 goals kicked each, whatever it was. But from a pressure finals perspective, it was outstanding. Yesterday, you talk about the Fremantle game. Unfortunately, Essendon are yet to win a final, which is a sad state of affairs. My heart bleeds. But at the same time, last night was a cracking game. You talk about 3,000 to 4,000. The noise, the atmosphere was off the charts. I think when Fremantle got in front the first time, the noise that came through the screen. But just as you said, Judge, and you've said it before, they keep shooting themselves in the foot. 2 weeks ago, Laura Kane, who's the dog's body at the AFL, came out with the head of AFLW. I can't remember her name. Nicole Livingston, I thought was still involved because you haven't heard from her. But they just do no favours for the game, and the game has improved skill-wise. Like, ignore the attendance side of it, because your NRL are the prime proof of that, right? Grow the bloody game, do it properly, rather than have it as an afterthought and use it to experiment on. It is improved out of sight, skill-wise, standards. West Coast were a basket case, they've improved. Richmond were the same, they've improved, got better. More players drafted in through the system are going to improve the game. Now, unlike the NRLW, we've got 18 teams now, and we understand that the talent pool may not get across all of those, but it will. It will. And the stigmatism attached with the standard is no good, compared to AFL, again, shoot ourselves in the foot. The standard has improved out of sight, and you actually start knowing who some of the star players are of the AFLW, and we're starting to promote them. I'm done. Rant over.
Well, thanks for that, David. Appreciate that. Now, John, you visited the United States to look at many things. What was your take on sport while you're over there?
Oh, it's just fascinating, Professor. The baseball is Americans' national game. Like, I don't know any other country that gets around a national game the same way. Obviously, soccer, football is, but this is a unique homegrown game which they love. It's got an extraordinary amount of games. I think it's 162. Dan.
Regular season. Yeah, regular season.
And the postseason's almost as long, but they absolutely love it. And you can see why they can. I mean, New York's got 2 teams, and I think LA's got 2 teams. I mean, Melbourne's got 10 football teams. So they're pretty focused. And it was just wonderful to see the passion amongst the Americans for their national game. I'm not sure it's shared for the NFL, and I think that's mainly because kids don't, as a matter of course, play gridiron on a Saturday afternoon. Everybody played baseball with their kids, and so it's a lovely thing to see it, mixed with my absolute disappointment as to how little our national game, sorry, Paul, Australian rules football, is known, and they just don't know it. And I think it's one of the greatest shames of all time. So I actually think it's I think Australian rules could take a real dominant, or certainly prominent, position in American sporting life. But in any event, it was great to see. It was great to talk to Americans about they love their sport, but God, they love their baseball.
Did you get to a game, John?
Well, no. Our last day was the day that the Yankees were home, and I don't think I can afford a ticket. They were pretty pricey, but the television coverage is great. And that chap Freeman, bloody hell, that was the second game, I think, Dan, when he had bases loaded, World Series, he hits a homer. I mean, let's just talk about go nuts and then go up about 10 different levels. The crowd went out. I mean, that is every American child's dream to do that in the World Series. And it was great. Fantastic to watch.
Well, the good part about it, John, is that Dan has given us the template for how to get Australian rules in. Grassroots, start at the grassroots level.
Yep.
Absolutely. Creates, there's all kinds, and Judge, you may have seen it flying over. There's all kinds of crop circles out here in the middle of the United States. Great big corns with great big circles out there. They're all just waiting for somebody to come on and start forming an AFL league in the United States. So every time I fly over the Midwest, I see them.
Out of this, boys, build it.
Elon Musk told me that was actually Martians coming, so we'll leave them to
build it, and they will come.
Well, Judge, I'll reference 2 things here. So, Judge, you hit it. I mean, every dad plays catch with his son, his daughter. I mean, that's why the end of Field of Dreams, hey, Dad, would you like to have a catch, is so emotional in that movie in so many ways. And you look at how many people have claimed that they caught Shohei Ohtani's 50-50 baseball. I mean, it may be the entire stadium that was there for that game that all claimed that they caught that ball. So, again, that's the passion of baseball here in the United States.
I love the bit when the fan tried to take the ball out of the player's mitt after he hit the shot. And he just took it out of his hand. Yeah, it was a bit of player involvement.
There was 3 of them having a go at it, John, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Professor, does this take some vision, some inspiration, and some passion? Does that mean that we've got the right person sitting in the chair at AFL House at the moment, or would you say that the deal is probably not that person? I'm actually not sure what Andrew. I don't know.
I'll answer your question. Andrew is not that person, and nor is the head of the commission. He's not that person. So, in fact, I think it'll probably be a female, a woman who actually understands people, as in all people, who's got some background in broadcasting and sport. That's the sort of person I'd be, rather than a contract writer like we've got running the AFL at the moment.
Hey, Judge, I think you've got an issue with what you said. Once you get into the AFL House, it's like a cult.
Yeah, it's the boys' club.
Yeah.
Forget anything you've done prior to AFL House. Come in here, and we will mould you. You get used to the way that things are done here. So I think you've. It comes back to also. Let me know how Andrew Demetrio is still relevant and still being part of any discussions around AFL.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
the next 5 hours session we get, Cooter, you and I can talk about these things, and I reckon we'll sort the place out better than they are at present. But anyway, it is what it is, Professor.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. All right. Well, what is what it is? Gelding, we haven't relied on you for the tips for many, many weeks. Can you give us something to tide us over until that's racing next Saturday?
Oh, well, Professor, it's been rather a busy week, and our cousin show, That's Racing, has been very, very busy, coming up to well over 200 shows now, so looking forward to it. But today, a bit of a lull after the big Spring Carnival, Professor, and watching a few shows this morning, everyone's patting themselves on the back for what a sensational Spring Carnival it was, and having 280,000 people attend the races. So all very good. But a couple today for Ararat, Professor. Ararat Cup Day. We might go early in race 2, number 8, Classy Girl. Kennewell Yeomans with Elle Bates aboard. We might hop into race 4, number 8, Real Hot, Simon Weil and T. Nugent. Then go across probably the bet of the day, Professor, with one of your favourite jockeys aboard. Race 6, number 5, Kings Valley, trained by Kieran Marin to be ridden by Linda Meach. And then in race 8, we have number 8, Elpingstone, trained by Tony McAvoy and Harry Coffey. So there's 4 for today, Professor, at Ararat, and maybe you'd like to fill the listeners and the fellow panelists in on a possible runner on Wednesday up at Bendigo, Professor.
Oh, Savvy Rocker.
Savvy Rocker.
Yeah.
Will Linda Meach be riding it?
I don't know. Gelding.
Gelding, can I just ask you, Gelding, before the Melbourne Cup, the day or two beforehand, one of the learned sports pages, so they said Australia will never have another homegrown Melbourne Cup winner. And look what happened on Tuesday.
Yes.
I mean, seriously, was that just an irresponsible comment, or what do you think?
Well, I've got to admit the breeding of the Cup winner, the stallion, was Extreme Choice, and Extreme Choice was a tiny horse trained by Mick Price that actually won a 2-year-old Blue Diamond. So the stallion was a sprinter, and here it is siring the winner of the Melbourne Cup. So, Look, the number of Australian-bred horses that actually ran in the Cup, John, was very limited, because a lot of them, even though they're trained in Australia and trained by Australian trainers, they were bred overseas. A lot of them were brought overseas. So a comment I could really probably do it. I could have had 25 tips in the 23-horse field and still miss the winner of the Cup. When the horse is beaten by 20 lengths in the Caulfield Cup,
I checked the form guide. It said well held last start. You're not wrong, well held. I was saying on the day, it's like the marathon. You can't fluke a marathon. No one overtakes the Kenyans and has been hidden from the world. But somehow this horse is hidden from the world and wins a Melbourne Cup. You couldn't.
John, this horse paid $63, and I think it paid unders.
Yeah.
Gelding, the horse I had started at 10-1 and it finished at 3:30.
Yeah.
So it wasn't going too well.
That winner's seen more of Australia than the Leyland brothers. It's gone everywhere.
John, during the week, if you hadn't been watching our cousin show that racing, Mark has a very, very interesting point to take up to you. After tipping a horse to be ridden by Craig Williams, and he took off at the 900-metre mark, and the horse ran out of puff with 500 metres to go and finish last. He wanted to come back to your theory. Does the jockey matter?
Yep.
Yeah, and maybe one for another day.
Been willowed.
Yes, we'd been willowed, and if backers, there was just an easy way to make money over the Melbourne Cup Series, and that was back Jay McDonald.
Anything that Jay McDonald was riding.
Well, you've got Jay McDonald, and I think you've got the rest. At the moment, he's just that far. Yes, he's getting on the best horses because he is the best jockey, but he is riding the best horses exceptionally well.
I love when they said him and Billy Slater, who did some fine work on the horse doing the interviews post-race, when they said they're great mates, they probably didn't know each other at the start of the carnival. It's just every 3 out of 4 races, they're having a chat. So.
Well, there was a bit of a bromance going on there when he's interviewing him basically every third race.
Yeah.
So, look.
All right, gentlemen, we might finish on this one. I gave this to Gelding yesterday. This was Jay McDonald's rides yesterday. 4th in the first race. He had no ride in the second race. 4th, 2nd, 1st, 1st, 3rd, 1st, 1st. They're his rides. 2 of those rides were worth $3 million. So
he got 4 Group 1s over the carnival, and that was the week after he won the Cox Plate by 8 lengths on Via Sistina.
All right, gentlemen, thanks for meeting again today. It's been terrific. It's been too long between drinks, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. Good afternoon to you all.